Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Gray Matter. Well, COVID 19. Some of us are out there still wearing masks. Some of us are triggered when we see our friends and neighbors wearing masks. Many of us want to just forget all about COVID 19, and others can't forget it. We're struck by it. We're suffering from post traumatic stress over it. So, today on the program, we have a guest who's going to talk to us about some of the important work that he is doing with something called the National Citizens Inquiry. And these people are not trying to forget about COVID 19, they're trying to investigate it to bring forth the stories and the data so that we have a coherent record in Canada of what happened. And more importantly, ultimately, to decide who is responsible, how are they responsible, and what can we do to restore, to rehabilitate the Canadian polity over what has happened over the past 4 years. So today on the program, we're blessed to have Mr. Ted Kuntz, who is a longtime head, one of the founders of Vaccine Choice Canada. I believe he's been working there with them for over 40 years. And most recently, he's taken on a very important role in the National Citizens Inquiry that we're going to be talking about today. Welcome to the program, Ted. It's great to have you on. I've been looking forward to this conversation with you.
Well, Leighton, nice to see you again. Thanks for this opportunity. And let me just make a correction so that I don't
Sure.
show any disrespect to my colleagues at Vaccine Choice Canada. I was not one of the original founders 40 years ago. I've been in this movement probably for 35 years, but Etta West and a few very dedicated parents is who started Vaccine Choice Canada back in 1982. So, relatively speaking, I'm a latecomer.
hmm So, Ted, I know you've been involved with Vaccine Choice for a very long time, but today I would like to focus on, if we could, about your work with the National Citizens Inquiry. And perhaps for those who were not familiar with the National Citizens Inquiry, if you wouldn't mind maybe starting with a little bit of a thumbnail sketch, a synopsis of what has happened thus far with the National Citizens Inquiry, and then perhaps we could segue into some of the challenges and some of the work that it plans to do going
Great.
forward.
Glad to do that. So again, thank you for inviting me. For those that may not be aware, and I would suspect that your followers, Leighton, probably were all very well aware of the National Citizens Inquiry. We held hearings in 8 cities across Canada in 2023. We received testimony from 305 individuals, both lay and expert, and the testimony was given under oath, and it's actually the largest collection of testimony given under oath pertaining to government response to COVID-19 in the world. It was a life transforming event for those that were involved. I was, along with 10 other individuals, I was part of the founding group that conceptualized the National Citizens Inquiry back in 2022. We recognize the need for a citizen led, citizen funded inquiry because we had zero confidence that government could investigate themselves and hold themselves to account. And so, what began is as an idea. We actually late when we began, we were reluctant to disclose beyond the first 2 cities that we were offering testimonies in because we didn't know whether we would have funds to go to a third city. I mean, we literally started with $0 in our bank account. We had no followers on Twitter. We had no social media presence, and we began with a hope and a prayer, quite literally. And what I say is that we were flying an airplane while we were building it, and much to our delight, I think we were quite blessed that we were supported so deeply by Canadians that the funds came in. Volunteers showed up by the hundreds. It was an amazing experience. As it rolled across the country, it picked up more steam and more enthusiasm. I helped facilitate the inquiries in Vancouver, and that was one of the last cities on our eight city tour. And I have to tell you, by the time it got to Vancouver, I was inundated with requests for people that wanted to testify at the hearings. Uh,
Mm.
Over the 3 days, we probably had the availability to have generally about 34 or 35 people testify. And I probably had 150 requests for testimony just in Vancouver.
Incredible.
So it was quite a process to go through and figure out what's the most important testimony that we need to hear. Um, but I can tell you that one of the things that happened that I was most impacted by is we had many witnesses that were actually terrified to speak publicly. They felt like they
Mm.
had been already attacked, shamed, discredited, marginalized, and they were afraid that by testifying at the National Citizens Inquiry that would open them up to more ridicule. And
Mm.
a number of our witnesses actually withdrew literally at the last minute because the fear was too great. But I can tell you for those that fought through their fear and gave testimony that you could see something transformative happen for those people. They found their voice, they found their authority, and not only did they speak at the inquiry, that they learned to stand up and speak loudly and more assertively than ever before in their life. And so what I believe is that the National Citizens Inquiry transformed Canadians. It helped them to recognize that they have an important responsibility to hold our governments to account and to protect our rights and freedoms. And
Mhm.
I think when the history of Canada is written of this time, if it's written by the victors, which I hope we are, that the two events that I think will be held in high esteem will be the Freedom Convoy, the Truckers' Convoy to Ottawa, and the National Citizens Inquiry.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say without hesitation that the National Citizens Inquiry is the most important, most significant public legal education
Mm.
initiative that has been undertaken in this country in my lifetime. I
Mhm.
can't think of anything else that has been as important, has been as widespread, and has done as much for the people who participated in it. And the only shame about the inquiry is that it seems like not enough people know about it yet. And that's part
Right,
of
right,
why the National Citizens Inquiry is continuing. But there's so much more work that needs to be done. That's the point of what you are saying, what
right.
the proper NCI is saying. So, what is that work? What is the key work going forward as you see it? This sort of I won't say new vision, but maybe the renovated vision for the NCI. What does that look like going forward over the next few months? I noticed that there are some new hearings set up, I believe, in
Yep.
Saskatchewan at the end of May. So, how does that all sort of fit together, and what is the ultimate goal of the NCI going forward?
Well, back in June of 2023, after we completed the hearings, we came to the realization that the National Citizens Inquiry is an essential tool in a robust democracy in Canada, and it's a
Hmm.
mechanism of citizen engagement, citizen responsibility for accountability of our governments. And so we were having conversations immediately after the conclusion of the eight cities of testimony that we need to create a governance structure that will and an organizational structure that will allow for the ongoing of the National Citizens Inquiry. There's many more topics that need to be explored other than COVID, as I'm sure you would agree.
Free speech is one that's under serious attack. It's connected to COVID, as you know. Yeah, this is, and I thought about this. Not to interrupt you, but I thought about this actually during a conversation I had with Sean Buckley when I was at the hearings in Red Deer, and we had a discussion around, this whole concept that's being applied to COVID has much broader implications. And so it's
Yeah,
obvious that Sean and some of you were thinking about this even back then. But I quite agree. The potential for the National Citizens Inquiry is truly incredible to be a
mm,
bulwark for freedom and democracy and health and prosperity and all the things that I guess we would describe as Canadian values, even though our prime minister thinks they don't exist. We know better. But is that kind of the vision going forward, that the National Citizens Inquiry is just kind of in its infancy and has you've laid down the roots, and now we're going to see how the tree grows.
Exactly, Leighton. What I've said is we've only really just begun, and so COVID was our birthing. But there are many more aspects that need to be looked at, that need to be investigated, that need to shine the light of an inquiry on them. What we did just last week, Leighton, is we put out a survey to our email list saying what would you like the National Citizens Inquirer
I
to look at
I
next.
I saw that one. I responded. That was very
And
interesting.
and what did you suggest that we do next?
Well, my big thing is I think is freedom of speech,
Mhm.
which is, as you know, under serious attack, not
Yes.
only in Canada but worldwide. But the freedom of speech, it's been said, as you know, it's maybe the the key freedom, because it's the one that you can use to win back all the
Yeah.
others. And we're being silenced in this country. And we're perilously close to a line, or perhaps a point of no return. And so I think the NCI has a real role there. And there are so many stories that could be told throughout
Yeah.
the country about how people are being censored and stifled and suppressed and oppressed. Now the Canadian government is passing laws that are going to make us a society of snitches,
Yeah.
for money. It's truly obscene. All in the name of praying to the God of safety. The same one that was used to justify all things COVID is now being used to justify basically anything that the government thinks is good for us, but we all know and can see tangibly every day is really bad for us. So I would think that's a very key one for the NCI to be looking at going forward. Would you agree?
Absolutely agree. And I was just in a meeting with the World Council of Health, and we were talking about what's happening globally, and what's clear is that just like that, our government here has introduced this so-called hate legislation or hate bill. Uh, what I learned today is that other countries around the world, they've got exactly the same kind of legislation, and they're
They
calling it
do.
an
Yeah.
anti-hate bill. So
Hmm.
this this is an organized, a global effort, a conspiracy. It's clearly there's been an organized effort to introduce the kind of legislation in countries around the world that will censor free speech and make it a crime to speak your mind about things that are happening. So I absolutely agree with you, is that if we lose the right to free speech, all the other rights can't be defended if you can't speak
Hmm.
about them.
Hmm.
So I would suggest that that's on the top of my list as well.
Hmm.
The other one, Leighton, and I'm sure you would agree, is that I'm concerned with how our court system is operating here in
Oh,
Canada. It feels
yes.
like they have abandoned their responsibility to protect Canadians and uphold the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and
Hmm.
keep government in their lane.
Hmm.
They, instead of being a system of accountability or a safeguard for Canadians, they seem to be participating with the government in these violations of rights and freedoms. It's actually quite
Yes,
disturbing.
it is. It's very concerning, especially when you consider that the Supreme Court of Canada, and many people don't realize this, but that court has the total discretion to pick and choose which cases it will hear. It has unassailable discretion to do so, and it has repeatedly and steadfastly, uniformly refused to hear any case
Yeah,
involving COVID-19. This is, as you know, Ted, this is the issue of our time. We're talking about it. It has affected every single Canadian, even the unborn.